Hi. Yes, so we're here to talk about the Honey Club, which, as we said, is something a little bit more local, but hopefully draws on a lot of the things, particularly that Tom was just talking about. I'm Amy. I'm from Wolff Olins, which is a brand and innovation firm that's literally just down the canal. And this is Jane from Global Generation, which is a local youth sustainable development charity, and they run urban gardens out of building materials, and literally there is a garden in Skips just outside this building. So it may seem like a slightly unexpected partnership at first, a sort of glossy global brand company with clients all over the world, and Global Generation, which is, you know, a charity which very much has its roots deep into the local community here in King's Cross. But actually what we've found is that unexpectedness has led to some really exciting possibilities for us, and we've started to draw on the strengths of both the organisations to build something that is new and exciting and stronger, all the stronger for it. So, what is the Honey Club? It is a social enterprise, so we aim to make profit through our activities that then go back in to support our mission. And we are very much starting locally, but we have a big global ambition, which is up there, so to build the biggest bee-friendly network in the world, but starting with our community here in King's Cross. And you might ask, why bees? I'm sure, you know, this is a very enlightened crowd, and I'm sure you've all heard that bees are an incredibly important part of our ecosystem. You know, in the natural world, they're one of the key pollinators, so they actually account in Europe for, they help create around a third of all we eat. So environmentally and economically to the whole business of farming and our food production, they're incredibly important. But unfortunately, over the years, their population has become in danger, partly to do with mass farming practices, which destroys a lot of their natural habitats and feeding grounds, and also to do with the introduction of pesticides. And some experts even think that we might be in danger of losing them altogether in Britain by 2018, unless we start to take action, which is really very much what inspired us to go ahead and take action ourselves to help the bees. The Honey Club is a collection of quite a diverse group of people, but all based around here in King's Cross. So there's us, obviously Wolff Olins and Global Generation. There's also, very importantly, the young people from local schools, and they are involved through Global Generation itself, who works very closely with lots of young people from the schools that you can see up there, and actually some more. We also have paid business members who pay to be part of the Honey Club and to gain the benefits from being involved. And they at the moment include OMD, which is a media business in our building, The Guardian and the Eurostar, and we hope to grow that community as the years go on. And we also gain a lot of valuable support from an amazing gardening manager, Paul Richards, who works with both our organisations, and also Urban Bees, who are just down the road. Well, they actually have hives all over London, but they're in Camley Street Nature Reserve as well. And Brian's been a huge help to us over the last year, teaching us all about bees and coming to check on them quite regularly. And it's worth saying that once we're all in our bee suits, we are pretty much equals, looking equally silly, but it's quite nice to get involved in something quite practical and hands-on, so that we are working alongside each other in that way. We have 2 hives on our roof at the moment on the Wolff Olins building. This is a picture from when we sort of had a little official opening, hive launching party back in May last year. And they house around 100,000 western honeybees. And we are hoping over time, some of our business members in particular are thinking about getting their own hives, so we hope to sort of grow that population itself. And we also run events, so this is one of the big benefits for the members and also for the young people involved. And what we hope to do with these events that we run is really a way of bringing the community together and obviously to support the cause. It does a huge amount to raise awareness about the plight of the bees to help us all learn something new and have a bit of fun together. So last year we had the welcome event, which really introduced the whole community to each other, had a great little video from Paul introducing the idea of guerrilla gardening, and we also had run a quiz which everyone got very excited about because they were all competing for a prize, so you can see there was quite a lot of activity. We recently had a brilliant Cooking with Honey event where our lovely chef Sam from Wolff Olins was involved, and our designer Charlotte, who's here today, her auntie, who's a bit of a culinary celebrity in France, also attended, and she was brilliant. And so everyone was sort of, you know, involved together, creating this brilliant menu, eating it together, and it was all obviously learning about the bees as well, and about how important they've been to our culinary development over the years. And we've got a bee-friendly gardening event coming up in April. And at that point, I'm just going to wrap up my section to say that really what this is starting to do, and on the theme of emergence, is the idea that this is creating new ways for businesses, for young people, for the community in general, to really connect with each other. And for the young people in particular, it's giving them a new way to think about the environment. They do a lot of that through what Global Generation does anyway, but there's something really lovely about starting with the honeybee. It's a living thing. It gives them a new way, new access into understanding sustainability and that interconnectedness of our environment and social environment as well. Also the business. We are running as a social enterprise. We aim to make profit that goes back into pursuing our cause, and the young people have been very integrally involved in making that happen. So it's a completely new way for them to learn about business in a hands-on way, and also working alongside business people just as equals and getting to know them on an individual level, so that they're seeing all this huge development in King's Cross and all these businesses arrive, and to give them a way to actually chat to them face to face is really important for them to understand what's happening to their area. And then for the business people, we really hope this can be the emergence of quite a new way of doing what has become quite a cynical term, I think, you know, corporate social responsibility. We really want to encourage a new way of doing it, which is much more, less about sort of faceless donations or the odd day here and there, which is quite disconnected from the impact that you have, and something that's much more active, much more local, and hopefully much more long-term. And I'll pass over to Jane.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's fantastic to be here, and also to be here amongst our neighbours. As Amy said, we're based right at the back of Central St Martins, and you know, it's particularly exciting what's happening in King's Cross, what's happening on the development site. And the Honey Club, in a way, was, and what's happened in our relationship with Wolff Olins seems to have been a harbinger of some of these. It's all about new connections and making room, as Amy says, for the unexpected, making room for what we don't already know. And I think on one hand, an earlier speaker said we're living in challenging times, but we're also living, I think, in truly remarkable times, where it's demanding of all of us a kind of radical humility, where whilst, you know, we are, as many speakers have spoken about, there's this curiosity element, we're also predicated towards the familiar and to doing what we already know. And I think sometimes we need excuses to kickstart us into unfamiliar territory. So at this point, I just want to say a massive thank you to Wolff Olins, actually, for enabling something to happen where I personally, and the young people I'm involved with and my colleagues, we really experience the benefit of two very different organisations coming together, and coming together in an equal co-learning journey. And to really illustrate my point of how it's evolved, how new things have emerged over time, I want to take you back to the very beginning, to 2007. And we were approached initially with the idea of helping to create a rooftop vegetable garden to provide food for the in-house canteen, and also as a hands-on way of engaging staff in environmental action, which was a great thing to do in and of itself. But I remember at that first meeting coming and saying, well, you know, if we're involved, of course we have to involve local young people in every stage of the build process. And at that particular point, it seemed a bit of an odd idea that I was asking to open the doors to a bunch of hoodies to run riot through the building, and perhaps would extra security be needed to be laid on. And anyway, minds were put at rest when we managed to produce a big set of agreements, and we'd be responsible if they fell off the roof, and don't worry about it. And so that was one part of it. And then the other part, I had some kind of idea that at that point we'd been involved in a number of green spaces in King's Cross on top of another office building, on top of schools. And so I said, great, and this project is part of a map of what's happening. And I was kind of very busy about my own ideas in this map. And again, there was a degree of bewilderment and not much traction. And I kind of got the point at that stage, that I just had to drop my ideas, make some space, and listen to the real passion that was coming out of a number of people in Wolff Olins, and see where could we begin this project where everybody could stand in their own shoes with their own ideas. And the main thing I felt was it was important to begin these relationships. And given that this recession had literally just struck, beginning and getting the money for sign-off was not exactly an easy thing. But anyway, thanks to the enthusiasm of particularly Bethany Kobe, one of the in-house designers, and Stuart, the buildings manager, an agreement was reached, start date was set, and our young people were there at the starting blocks. So over the first few months, this rooftop garden was created through a series of hands-on workshops involved in the building and the planting, and our young people were working alongside. These were mainly teenagers who live around this development site on either side, so 14 to 16-year-olds. So they were involved working alongside the Wolff Olins staff, and in many cases teaching them how to plant, how to weave the willow baskets that you can see up there, how to saw wood. And it happened very naturally that the barriers dropped away and enthusiasms formed. And I think for me, one of the most heartening things within the project was just to see when individuals, it was a very practical way that, and even though it was a small project in a sense, they could step up to their role in taking practical action and doing something, their role in creating the future. So I've got a quote from, this is Benga, who was working on the project at the time. And he just said, I've been involved since the beginning when there was no soil on the roof, and now we're doing the planting. Although it is step by step, it's a big step for the future. And whilst this kind of engagement, and I would say transformation. We were transforming a garden, but there was a kind of transformation going on the inside and between people. And I spoke quite a lot with Bethany about the value of involving young people in the process, because whilst I was very, and my colleagues and I were all very enthusiastic about the idea, we wanted to be sure it wasn't just, a kind of cute thing, a fluffy, isn't it nice? We've got young people involved. Was it generative? Was it generative for everybody? Was it two-way? And Bethany gave me an interesting insight. I mean, I've worked all my life more or less in the not-for-profit sector, and so in small organizations, which I guess an advantage of that is you have the freedom to make it up as you go along. And you sort of have to a lot of the time. But anyway, she said to me that it had initially been challenging involving people in environmental action, just because, understandably, of the culture of professionalism in the firm, and people felt that it wasn't their area of expertise. But what she said was, engaging with the generators is enabling people to let down their guard, to be more vulnerable and open to what they don't already know. They feel a sense of responsibility for others, for the future, and are more willing to enter into a spirit of inquiry. And the project continued like that. And you know, when I look over time and then when I look back, I can see that it very much was a process of sowing seeds, not just in the ground, but in the hearts and minds of many different individuals who were involved in many different ways. From, you know, the people at Wolff Olins at the reception who have been so welcoming to us coming into the building, to people taking the pictures, working on the project, signing things off, and in a way, a different culture, a fertile culture, just like the soil, a fertile culture happened where new ideas did emerge, and over time. It didn't happen overnight. And so I want you to now fast forward 3 years, and what happened was, amongst a number of the Wolff Olins staff, they felt that they wanted to think more about social enterprise and invited some of our generators, which is what we call our young people, to come to you know, a workshop process and take part in that. And out of that emerged the ideas for the Honey Club and what it has become at this point. So I'm going to pass over to Amy for the next chapter.
Yeah, so that from that first workshop, what has happened for us as a business, and particularly the team of us who work on the Honey Club day to day, is we've developed a way of working that's quite new for us and has been really an emergence in a way, because through working with the young people, I mean, we meet with them fairly regularly, and we hold, and like I said before, we sort of created the idea of the Honey Club with them, right from thinking about the business model, and then we've done several workshops in terms of creating tools to enable us to pitch the idea to local businesses. The young people also came with us to do those pitches, which I think they really enjoyed. And since then, developing things around visual identity, but also things around expanding the business model, getting their ideas, which are often very free and innovative in terms of how we could stretch this and how it might be interesting to more people than we maybe at first thought. And I think one of the things is that it's also been hugely important for us as a business that, you know, we aspire to experimentation a lot, as many people do, but sometimes it's quite difficult to see past obstacles. And I think, you know, both with the garden and with the hives, one of the first obstacles that people come up against is when you see something unexpected and you're not quite sure how to get there or where it's going to end. It's maybe easier to say no than yes. And it's quite rightly, you know, we had to really think about what it meant for the business in terms of the business case for us from a financial level, but also for the internal culture and you know, making sure everyone came on that journey. And, you know, it wouldn't be wrong to say that having persevered with that and made the roof garden and the Honey Club part of what we do, they're now definitely one of the things that most people are most proud of, and often one of the things that people say, you know, when they're asked what do you love about working at Wolff Olins, those are the things that come top of the list. Particularly, obviously, when there's honey involved. And it's, you know, there's been many occasions for us to get involved and share that experience with the generators as well. I mean, last August we went down to the London Honey Festival, which takes place every year in the South Bank, and we did manage to take a mini harvest. Our bees were still settling in, so they didn't produce loads, but we did have about 20 of these lovely little pots. And we were all there manning a stall and explaining ourselves and distributing honey to people young and old, and that was a really great experience. So I think as a business, you know, we now really appreciate all the incredible support we get internally, and I think we are using the Honey Club as a way to learn to sort of believe in a better future and then trust our motivation and skills to get us there, even if the path isn't immediately obvious. And I think that's been a huge benefit to us. And yeah, needless to say, we're very happy when we get to taste the honey as well. Also on an individual level, obviously, there are some of us who it's had a huge impact on in terms of our roles. The four of us girls, Bethany, me, Yelena and Charlotte, who are dealing with it more on a day-to-day basis, you know, we've had huge learnings from working with the generators, putting so much of what we talk about into practice. You know, collaboration is something that we all want to do, and it's not always easy, and collaborating with Global Generation has been a huge learning experience. It does sometimes take longer, but the results are often much, much richer. And you know, we've had to bring the generators on the journey with us. We always have to think about how we break down the business into, you know, manageable chunks, and how we tackle each part of it rather than just running away with it and making it something that isn't necessarily right for everyone. It's also been a chance for us to create a social enterprise, something that we talk to lots of our clients are interested in, and I think we all felt, you know, it was about time, rather than just talking about it and admiring others, that we took that on ourselves and created one for ourselves. And so, you know, the benefits of that are just you can't really put a price on it, because we now know what it's like to be involved and to work with, you know, an out-and-out charity, and to understand their values and always be sense-checking our ideas about what it makes, does that make sense for the young people. It's a brilliant learning experience. And also, Jane briefly mentioned Stuart, who's our wonderful building manager. And I mean, it wouldn't be an understatement to say his role has completely transformed through the garden and the hives. He is now not only building manager, but also expert gardener, expert beekeeper. And I mean, every time we have people into the building who want to learn more, whether it be kids, be scientists have come, we've had local builders from the opposite building saying, hey, we like what you're doing there, can we do some of that? I mean, he is the font of all knowledge for that. So it's really transformed his experience of working at Wolff Olins, which has been a completely unexpected and unforeseeable thing, and one of the best things to come out of it. Also, for the business community, obviously that's a huge part of what we want to achieve with this, is, like I said, giving businesses within the King's Cross area a different kind of engagement with the community that transcends how it may have been done traditionally. And, you know, we are by no means perfect. We're still, we make mistakes, but we are, I think what's important is that we're all in it together, and we are learning through action. And, you know, Tom touched on this a lot with his previous talk, and it is, I think, by doing that you learn the most, and you learn what works and what doesn't. And so we really do, to reiterate my point again, we really do hope this is sort of the tip of an iceberg for kind of community engagement that is much more active and much more local, and hopefully much more long term. And it really helps to start with the bee, because it's a living thing, and that's something that everyone can relate to.
Thanks. Well, really just, you know, to build on what Amy has said, from my point of view, the incredible skill and enthusiasm of her team at Wolff Olins has taken an original seed of an idea and a vision way further, and in very different directions than I would have ever imagined possible. And I described at the beginning how there was a degree of resistance to the idea of having young people in the building. Well, that's completely turned on its head. Not only are the generators welcomed in the building, Wolff Olins have now come up with this idea through the membership model of the Honey Club. 50% of the membership fees goes to support our generators, and they're training the generators in pitching for the membership. So actually it's a kind of closed loop. They know, well, partly if they do a good job, they'll get to go on camp this year, and they'll, you know, have this journey and these new opportunities. So for a charity, that's a different way of income generation that is much more proactive and participatory and dynamic in learning. And I also described how initially the focus was, well, we just want food for our canteen and something on our rooftop, which was very understandable, and the idea of other sites in King's Cross. There wasn't much interest at that point. Well, now, forget about the boundaries of King's Cross, as Amy said. They want to create the biggest bee-friendly community in the world, and they mean it. It'll happen. And, you know, I can speak for myself and my colleagues. We never would have, you know, thought on that scale. So again, that's been another lesson for me about, on one hand, making room for what you don't already know, but on the other hand, being willing to sow seeds within the structures that are already there. And I think it's something in the spirit of what Ken Wilber would call transcend and include. So not knock away the very mechanisms which can make our ideas grow and flourish. And so in this case, it obviously was for us as a small grassroots organization, really having this partnership with business and with an organization working globally. So as we've both described throughout the whole process, it's been about learning and learning from each other, learning from the bees, and there is a lot within it that is still quite a mystery. So in terms of the bees, actually no one yet knows how a queen bee mates. Where does it happen? And how do the bees know which cell to choose in which to raise the queen bee? I think it's a very relevant question for the times we're living in. How do we build communities that are relevant to our urban areas where people are coming in and out by day and other people live here? What does sustainable development really look like? And for us, it's very much been, in some ways, a tacit process. We haven't been following rules. Nobody else is. We're not copying a pre-set out model. So it has been learning by doing. But I think through doing that, we're glimpsing a real meaning for some of these words that are getting talked about a lot, like innovation, corporate social responsibility. And in terms of emergence, I would just say we're learning about it by actually seeing it happen between us and beginning to trust that process. So in closure, I want to talk particularly also about education and how beneficial it has been to provide and create this situation where our young people can be involved with business. They're, you know, it means a lot to them. I think it can't be underestimated. And, you know, we live in this kind of funny world where there's, you know, young people living in London or all over the world, there's exposure to all this information. And in one way, you know, lots of progress. But on the other hand, you'll find many of the young people who live around here and probably many other parts of London live in quite small, bounded worlds. And the whole idea of actually working in a business and learning together with business employees, having a job themselves, is become like the Holy Grail. And nature is actually something they're quite afraid of. And so Jihan, she was in our, one of the beekeepers with us. So we had, there were about 10 of us, 4 Wolff Olins staff, 4 young people, and some of us from Global Generation have gone through this process of learning all about the bees. And it was one day at the end, we just sat down together and she just started speaking, and then we ended up writing an article between, you know, of what she said. And these are her words. She basically said, in the beginning, I was really shy to work with adults because they seemed very smart and confident compared to me. And now we're all on the same level. I'm not saying miss and sir all the time. I'm also not saying or you. I also never imagined I'd literally be working with bees. I'm amazed by the bees, the way they make honey, the way new ones come and old ones die. And today there were 2 virgin queens in 1 hive. When I started, I was really scared. I was always in the corner. And now the bees can be around me and I don't move. I know how to move calmly, so they leave me alone. One day, if I have children, I know I will be able to back them up and encourage them not to be scared of insects, not to be afraid of the world.
Thank you.